It's me again. Here we are, Emma, back in my studio. Hello and welcome to another fun adventure here with fabrics and thread. Thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you for being here. It's lovely to welcome you again on this beautiful summer's day. I'm using that term loosely. You know, it's a British summer at the moment. Not so warm, but very pretty outside. Lots of lovely things coming up in the garden and all sorts of lovely things to do out there, like weeding and sorting out the vegetable patch and stuff like that. So a very warm welcome to you if it's your very first visit here. We're in week 2 of creating something with these gorgeous coloured fabrics. I am just loving having these. I've worked in purple for like the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months or something, and it's been lovely. It's been fantastic. I've created some really interesting pieces. But it is very much time for something different now, and I do often find that my summer times I tend to do seascapes. I don't know why, just something comes inside me. Perhaps it's because I'm going on holiday up to the Scottish Islands again, I don't know. It just comes upon me that I like to do something with these colours, and this time I've actually got some silvers in the mix as well as the sort of turquoises and the white. So lovely box of fabric here. So last week I started laying something out and just playing with it. And this week, I think we're going to get on with the embellishing. I did promise you some embellishing, and if you haven't seen a needle felting machine before, it's an embellisher. I will show you one very shortly, and we'll get on with that. It's been a long time in the coming, actually, because I suppose I did use it for my exhibition, but I haven't. I'll tell you what it is. I haven't shown you a video with my embellisher for a while. There's been a big gap while we've been doing just flat straight stitching using the fabrics just as they are. And what I love about an embellishing machine is it creates wonderful surfaces. If you haven't seen one in action, it's incredible. It just takes these fabrics and it just scrunches them up and it attaches them to a base fabric so that you can then stitch really easily onto that. So instead of having fabrics pinned on, you just use your embellisher and the needles just poke the fabric through into the base and it holds it there beautifully. So that's really cool, isn't it? I bought one quite a number of years ago. I saw one. I went for a felt making workshop, funnily enough, and the lady running it had a beautiful embellishing machine, and I'd never seen one before. It was like, whoa, what is this thing? And she let me use it, and of course I had a little go, and of course I broke a needle, because that's sometimes what happens. I think I was so nervous about using it. So don't worry if you break needles. I break needles. I do break needles on mine, but it's not a big deal. If you use it when you're quite relaxed, it's usually pretty okay. So I had a go on this felt making day, and I bought this machine, and honestly it's been I think it's a bit like sliced bread. It's been my greatest addition to my studio after a sewing machine. They kind of work in tandem really these days, because it just allows me to create surfaces, and you do such interesting things, and you can use threads and yarns and, as I say, fabric scrunch up. So something like an organza, something like this, which is why last week I was showing you to cut your pieces quite bigger than you think you're going to need. And if you do a little sample of them first, which is what I'm going to show you, you can then see how each fabric behaves and how much it's going to scrunch up and how much you're going to have to, overcut it, oversize it. But it's great for using scraps. It's fantastic if you've got a little box. So I'm just here, I've got a little basket started, not very many in there yet, but there will be by the time I finish this project. There'll be lots more scraps in there, I have no doubt. So you can take little scraps like this and they will go under your embellishing machine beautifully, so you don't really need to waste anything at all. You can just make something out of your little scraps. I've even been known, don't tell anybody, but I have been known to actually pick the threads off my floor if it's reasonably clean and they're fairly recent threads and they're not covered in dust or anything. I have been known to pick those threads up and actually pop them under the embellisher with some bits of fabric. So it's a really versatile machine. Not everybody's cup of tea, I absolutely get that, but for me it's my right hand woman. I've got my sewing machine here and my embellisher here, and the two of them together just help me create magic really. So I think the thing to do now is just to go over to my embellisher and we will see what she can do for us. So I'm just going to do this little bit of embellishing first. I've cut myself a little piece of curtain interlining fabric, and this is my embellishing machine. Now, if you haven't seen an embellishing machine before, it's basically looks like a sewing machine, but it's got 12 really sharp needles in there. If you've done hand needle felting before, you'll know kind of what they're like. They're just really sharp needles, and there's no thread whatsoever. And all that happens is you make sure your presser foot is down. This is your presser foot, but I have enough, there's enough space for my fabric to move quite freely underneath it. Okay, and so I'm just going to put some fabric down like this, and then we'll see what happens to it. So we can see, if I turn that over, oh, got some extra stray threads. You should be able to see there's little bits of blue threads coming through there. So it's basically the needles push the top fabric through into the bottom fabric. So, and what happens with the top fabric is it shrinks, and also it does get textured. It gets texturized. So you can't just have a flat piece of fabric anymore. It will get pushed because the needle marks remain. But obviously if you stitch on top of that, that's fine. So that's the other piece on, and we'll do this last piece here. It's lovely colours. I'm just loving these colours. You can see straight away how scrunched that is, so that might be something you want, or it might not. This is why I like to do a little sample. It is such a useful machine. Just put my needles up there. It is such a useful machine because that fabric is now held quite firmly onto this fabric, onto the back fabric, and that's really very easy now to stitch with a bit of, it needs a bit of stabiliser behind it because it's still quite soft, but it's really, really easy to stitch onto that now. So I'll just put a little bit of lace on here just to see what happens with that. I think it'll probably, this is quite thick lace, so it'll probably just stay the same. So it doesn't do anything too exciting to that, but what you can do is, if you don't want it all held down securely, you can just pull that back a little bit, and you can even probably, if you're careful, you could even probably bunch it up a little bit. You see, so you can start to make your lace into frothy waves, which is really nice. And if you don't like anything that you've put on, well, you simply just pull it off and you just start again. It's absolutely brilliant. So the other thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to try a little piece of this silvery fabric, because I'm not sure. I think this might get very, very frayed and I might not like it, so we'll see. So put the needles up again, and you can start to see it's starting to make a lovely surface, and then we can stitch into that. So it's a little bit frayed, so I'll have to perhaps use that judiciously, but I quite like the textures that it's making. So let's just have a little look at that. So what I've done, as I say, we've just embellished this little piece down, and we can see now what each piece is going to do and how much it actually covers the back, and how much of the back colour is going to come through, and whether that affects what you see. So I'm quite pleased with most of this. It looks quite good. I'm just wondering whether I need to do anything underneath it. I'm not sure. See, this, you could actually embellish it a little bit more scrunched up as well. It doesn't have to be embellished flat, as I will show you. So I think the thing to do, to be honest, I feel like just taking all of this lot off. Or do I pin it on? Sometimes, okay, I'm a woman of great decisiveness. Sometimes I pin it all on and just embellish it willy-nilly. But what I tend to like to do is build it up like I do on a normal piece of work, is build it up from the base. So I think we're going to start by taking off these little bits here, because these are the extra bits, if you like. And I'm just going to start embellishing and see what happens. I might cut a few more pieces of this, so I've got plenty to go at if I need it. And I'm going to put these out of the way, and we're just going to build it up from the base layers. So it looks very empty like that, but it will get filled in with other things going on as we move along. So I'm going to set the embellishing machine up and we'll get on with the fun. Okay, so what I've done is I've just put a whole piece of fabric on this base bit, because what I'm going to do is I'll be adding strips on top of it, and I thought I really want this underneath, I think, so that the organza and the lacy bits can go on top of it. So I'm just going to get this piece embellished down. I've put a couple of pins in just to hold it roughly where I want it. You don't even need to do that really, unless it's desperate. So let's get going. Obviously with embellishing you've got to be extra careful to get your pins out. I am scrupulous about that with my embellisher. And what I do is I work from like the centre outwards, or I work top down as I'm doing here, and you just gradually pull this fabric in. It will, you have to trust it. It looks terribly sort of pleated and stuff there, but if you just work slowly, it will gradually just all come good and get into the right place where you want it. So I'll finish this piece off and then we'll look at what we're going to put on top next. Okay, so I've got another strip, and this is a piece of the organza with the lovely sort of pre-dyed bit on it, and I'm putting it right down at the bottom here, and that's going to be my base piece. I actually had to fudge a little bit down here because my main fabric wasn't quite big enough, so I've scopped another bit underneath, so we've got like two bits here, but that's okay. My machine's coped with it, and actually it's given me a little bit of nice fraying. So there we go. If your material underneath gets a bit sort of pulled in, you can always take this top piece off and reapply it if it kind of pulls in underneath, but don't overwork it is my advice, because you can make holes. These needles are really powerful and they will make holes in fabric, which is great because sometimes we want that. We want a nice distressed surface. Okay, so I'm just going to get this piece down now. Now you can hear it makes different noises. When I'm doing it over this bit, there's no actual backing behind that bit. It's just going down to the edge and onto the thin material. So your machine will make different noises, and I always listen to my machine, and if it's using a fabric and it's struggling with it, I will stop and I might not use that fabric. It doesn't like all fabrics, but it likes most. It'll take all kinds of things. You just have to experiment and try. And if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But, you know, you don't really want to be breaking needles. Oh, excuse me. But you don't really want to be breaking needles, you know, unnecessarily. As I say, it will cope with most things, but you just have to listen. Pay attention to it. Let's just have a little look at that. Yeah, quite like that. What it's doing is it's just blending the colours. The embellisher does this ever so well. You can overlay with lots of different colours and it just sort of blends and harmonises them together. So that's really nice. But I think actually what I want to do next, I'm actually going to do the top bit up here with the light coloured fabric next. And I'm just wondering whether, do I do a whole piece again? I'm just going to use these. So I'm just going to use these strips that I cut earlier. And this is where you have to make decisions. You decide whether this piece is going to go underneath here or the other way around. It depends how much things fray. It depends whether you want to see the frayed edges. You know, it's entirely up to you how you do it. And as I say, if you don't like what you've done, you just take it off and start again. So I think actually I'm going to just lift this edge up slightly here. I could have planned this, but actually I just work with what comes as I go along. So I'm actually going to tuck this piece of fabric kind of underneath here. And that way you don't get any gaps in your colours as you go up the piece. So let's just get that in place. I'll just do that edge first. And this one's fraying, but that's okay because I can embellish those frayed edges down, I can cover it with something, or I can just appreciate them. You know, as you work with an embellisher, because it changes everything, it changes the surface, you learn to work with what it does, really. Which is what makes it quite exciting to work with. So let's get this piece down. Again, I'm working from this line upwards to make sure that nothing gets too scrunched up. There are no rules with this, guys. If you're going to use an embellisher, just make it up as you go along. I'm just trying to give you a few guidelines. Okay, so you can see here that I've actually started to cut my pieces differently. So instead of having great long thick pieces that are going all the way across, you can see I've started to kind of edit them. And this is what happens. This is the creative process that I find takes over. Once you get started, you can start to feel what needs to happen rather than just doing it like the way you're going to do to start with. But the important thing is you get started. So I've cut those up and I rather like them, and I'm going to get them embellished down. I've just got to finish off doing the top as well, and we'll see how it keeps going. Okay, so I've got all of this top bit done, and I've done it in little strips, and I'll show you that close up shortly. And let's just see what we're going to do with these little nice bits that I've trimmed down a bit. We're going to get these down. So you're already making your surface more interesting because you're cutting strips in funny shapes. And I just wanted to make use of this really nice dark bit and see what that does. Let's get this one down as well. Take my pins out. Okay, so I think that's about embellished as far as I want to do that for now. So I'm going to unroll it all and we'll have a little look at it and see where we're getting to. Okay, so this is more or less what it looks like. Okay, top's a bit chopped off, bottom's a bit chopped off, but I'm trying to show you as much as I can. You can see it's beginning to look like something now. It's beginning to take on its own character, and it starts to tell you what it wants to do, you know, where you want to put this bit, where you want to put that bit. Then it's the fun bit. It's really good. It's a process. I'm going to show you the back so you can see I haven't embellished this bit quite so heavily, and you can see it's a little bit ruckled, so I need to go over that perhaps a bit more to make sure that it's as smooth as it can be. So say here, down here where I've embellished it quite a lot because I've put 2 pieces of fabric on, it's a lot flatter, and that's really what I'm aiming for. So I need to just make sure, and I might just do it by adding more strips on of other things, I don't know, or I might just do a bit more. I might have to actually pull some of this fabric back a little bit and redo it a little. So it's quite important to check what's happening underneath, because obviously the top fabrics are scrunching in and pulling things, and you need to make sure that it keeps as, you know, as flat as you can get it. It's rather nice, it makes all these lovely frilly bits around the edges. So the edges, I'm not worrying about the edges at the moment. I'm just going to, I'll just cut this little bit off here. I'm leaving these as they are for now, and what will happen is towards the end of the piece I will trim these down, and I'll probably just use the embellisher loosely on the edges so that it makes a nice rough edge. This is the fun thing when you're using your embellisher, is it doesn't have to be all orderly. You can be as rough as you like, you know, you have bits sticking up and edges that are really rough. It's great fun. You kind of, it's like taking a straitjacket off. I think when you fold your edges under, that's really lovely. And you can do that by all means with this. In fact, you could be embellishing those underneath. But I think on this one, I really want to hang loose with it and let it just be what it's going to be. So I'm quite excited. As I say, I'm loving working with these colours again. So do let me know, you know, are these your favourite colours too at this time of year? You know, do you like working in sea colours? And what do you think of it so far? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next time in my studio. Have a wonderful week, whatever you're doing and wherever you are. I hope it's peaceful for you, and just get creating.
Ba 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 ba.